Focusing on the older adult population. There can be a lot of fear. They may have even been told by another healthcare provider, settle down, don't hurt yourself, don't fall. So that can lead to a lot of what clinicians would call kinesiophobia. Any exercise, especially if it's new to you, everything can feel hard. So you don't even know what your capacity is. So I think that can take several sessions with a professional to figure that out. All of my language with strength training is very functionally based as far as relating it to functional activities, because there's nobody in my class that wants to be a bodybuilder. That's not not the purpose of being there. So it's to be strong, to be able to get off the floor, carrying their groceries independently, all of those things. And you don't have to have a lot. You can pick 2 lower body and 2 upper body exercises and do those twice a week for a month. Don't overcomplicate it. There's benefit to something just super simple.
In this episode, we're diving deep into the practical side of strength training for anyone over the age of 55. Because today I'm speaking with Betsy Spieler, who is a physical therapist from Omaha, Nebraska, and she's got over 25 years experience of specialising in treating older adults. Now, she has a group program that is called You Be Stronger 55 Plus, and she tells us about her programming within that combines heavy strength training, high intensity intervals, balance work, and falls prevention. So a really comprehensive program, and we explore it in a way that you'll be able to repeat at home or in your own gym. So it's a really practical episode. You're really going to take a lot from it. So I'm going to just jump straight into it, and welcome, Betsy. Welcome, Betsy, and thank you for joining us on the Never Too Old to Live podcast. Looking forward to discussing some of what is very clear that we've got some shared sort of passion for strength training as an older adult, and some kind of common values that it sounds like we're trying to promote. But just to give the audience a little bit of context, it'd be good to get an idea of just what it is you do and who is it that you help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for having me. My name is Betsy Spieler. I'm a physical therapist in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've been practicing physical therapy for over 25 years now. And just in the last half of my career, have been focusing on the older adult population. So whether that's in the hospital, in skilled rehab, home health, and now more specifically in outpatient. So all my continuing education training and clinic hours have been really focused on that population. And what I found was that after people had graduated from therapy, they didn't have like a great program to go to that was appropriate for them, as far as in line with the literature that tells us that we can work hard even into our older age, that we can do strength training at a higher intensity, and that is actually what is recommended to be effective. So I created a group program with an owner of a gym, and so we run a group program, a group strengthening and balance program for people over 55 that meets twice a week. And so I'm involved in that program, and then I'm also doing some private practice and seeing people on my own at the gym.
Oh, brilliant. And yeah, I like the name of it is because it's You Be Stronger 55 Plus, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the name of the class. The name of my business is Stay Strong Physical Therapy and Wellness.
Perfect. And I like the words you put underneath of resiliency, vitality, longevity. I thought it was a nice touch there. And the other thing I spotted on there was that you had a little quote on there that it sort of stood out to me. So it says, "We understand that taking steps towards being a healthier, happier person can be very intimidating." And is that word intimidating there that kind of stood out? And I often hear, particularly in relation to any new form of exercise, but particularly strength-based training, the word intimidating comes up a lot, daunting, overwhelming, a lot of things along those lines. And there's a lot more barriers and challenges that people starting later on in life are facing when it comes to new exercise regimes than anyone in, say, the 20s and 30s. And it'd be good to kind of start there. Is there any common sort of challenges or barriers that you see a lot of people kind of using or facing that stops them from even getting started in the first place? And how much do you have to kind of overcome those with them first?
Yeah, there can be a lot of fear. And a lot of that is because we see people that have either graduated from therapy or maybe they're coming to therapy with pain, and so there's the fear of causing more pain.
Hmm.
There's the fear of causing more damage. And they have even been told by another healthcare provider, like, take it easy. Just, you know, settle down, don't hurt yourself, don't fall. That we put the fear in them to not fall. And so that can lead to a lot of, what clinicians would call kinesiophobia, being like the fear of movement.
Mm.
So we have that on board sometimes with our clients. And then secondary, it's just unfamiliar. A lot of people in, their 70s and 80s, they have not exercised for the purpose of exercising.
Hmm.
Sometimes they didn't have sport, weren't involved in sports growing up. And so it really, sometimes it takes a longer time to get people acclimated to the implements that we use with strength training. And so sometimes I won't use anything that's, you know, looks like a weight, like
Mm.
a kettlebell or a dumbbell, and we'll use a box filled with something that would imitate like a laundry basket, or bags of groceries. And I'm very, all of my language with strength training is very functionally based
Hmm.
as far as relating it to functional activities because I don't, there's nobody in my class that wants to be a bodybuilder. That's not not the purpose of being there. So it's to be strong, to be able to get off the floor, carrying their groceries independently, all of those things. So just being able to relate to them and what their goals are and their lifestyle is a great entry point to getting people kind of over the hump of trying it.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the fact you said there that going back to those words of resiliency, vitality, and longevity is
Mm.
that is the reason we're trying to get people to engage with strength training. It's like I say, it's not the bodybuilders, it's not to get the six pack, it's any
Mm-hmm.
of those related things. It's very much about that function. And
Yeah.
I suppose the fear of pain and other kind of symptoms. And I've just got off a interview with a menopause specialist, and we talked a lot about the barriers that can cause in terms of fatigue levels, um,
Mm-hmm.
the hot flashes and hot sweats,
Mm-hmm.
fears around bladder bowel control, and all of those. So we won't go too much into there. But the other one I find is just the belief in someone, what they believe they're able to do,
Right.
and how do you often sort of engage with that? So a good example of that is, like you say, someone looking at that heavy kettlebell, and it might be, and we talk kilograms here, but 12 kilograms, and I
Mhm.
can't, it's effectively double in pounds, but
Sure.
they don't believe they can pick it up, or they look at me like I'm crazy if I suggest they can pick it
Hmm.
up.
Hmm.
Yet they're picking up their 2-year-old granddaughter on a regular
Hmm.
basis. And is there any kind of other tips you kind of get to help people realize that they're already doing some of the things they're scared of doing?
Right. Yeah, well, you mentioned it, we're already giving them um, the functional equivalents, in our
Hmm.
daily life. Like I just said the other day, we were doing bent over, dumbbell rows. And I
Hmm.
said that dumbbell should weigh at least, if not more, than your bag of groceries. So think about that. So I give them some kind of functional metric to compare to. And these are people that are already in the class. And so if I have someone that's new, then it's all just about building that movement confidence.
Hmm.
And if I want them to pick up a kettlebell, I might not set it on the ground. I might elevate it and set it on a box,
Yeah.
so it doesn't look as intimidating. Um, I might hand them a kettlebell in standing
Hmm.
to say, just hold this. You've held heavy things before, and we'll talk about what that might be specific to them. Um, so, that bag of mulch that you're carrying in, from
Mm.
your car, this is not any heavier than that. So, just building their confidence step by step, and them having confidence in me as a professional, whether you're working with a physiotherapist or with a personal trainer that has good skills in scaling options. It's just building that therapeutic rapport and confidence between the client and the trainer.
Yeah. And it made me think that you'd sent me a video just before this that I didn't get a chance to look again now, but I've seen it before and thought how brilliant it was.
Hmm.
I'll put a link in the description and the show notes to it, but can you sort of describe some of the equivalences on that video of what they sort of suggest of what the gym
Sure.
is trying to
Yeah, and
represent?
I was hoping that you could link it in the show notes because it's a great resource.
Mm,
I want to give credit to, it was developed by Dustin Jones with the Institute of Clinical Excellence
mm,
um, in the older adult division. And the name of the video is Making It Meaningful. And so it's a side-by-side comparison of a functional activity such as carrying 2 bags of groceries into your house and going up the stairs, like up a few stairs into the house, and then in the gym, carrying dumbbells and doing step ups.
mm.
So it's a side by side comparison. Lifting a heavy casserole dish, maybe up into a cupboard versus an overhead press in the gym with dumbbells. And so I think it's a great illustration and what I aim to incorporate into all my training programs.
Yeah, I was just thinking in my head there that my where the kind of casserole dishes and the heavier dishes is in that cupboard above the oven, and I wonder if
Hmm.
that's a common thing. But yeah, it's having to lift that heavier weight up above it, or
Hmm.
you could imagine it on the getting your whole baggage on the aeroplane in the overhead lockers, and
I just had that I just had that conversation yesterday with one of our group members because we were doing single arm landmine presses, with a 45-pound barbell,
Mhm.
and she's newer to the class, and so I said, "Well, this is going to help you get that luggage in the overhead bin when you travel." She goes, "Well, I just hand it to my husband or the gentleman." I said, "Well, now you can say, 'Here, hold my purse,' and then you can do the suitcase." And so, she laughed at that. But it's giving them a lot more empowerment, when they
Mm,
can do it by themselves. I had another example of a text message I got this week from a client who said, "I just went up 1.5 flights of stairs without holding on to the railing."
mm,
And she's like, and so we talked about it yesterday, and I said, "Where was this?" And she goes, "It's at my house." She goes, "I never go to the basement." She goes, "And I went down there for something, and then I was able to come back up, and I didn't have to hold on to the railing." She's been through so many medical things. She actually had to take a break from the class for 9 months, but is back and has worked back into that strengthening. Um, and it's remarkable. She's like, "What are we doing that helps that?" And I'm like, Pretty much all of it."
mm.
So your whole body feels stronger and you're more confident on your feet. And so being able to carry something going up the step is what we talk about when we do step ups and holding dumbbells. You can bring up those Christmas decorations from the basement and you're
Mhm.
not scared about, tripping on the step or not being able to make it up. So,
But yeah, it sounds great. Because you find it does you've seen massive gains in confidence outside
mhm.
the gym. It's not just the confidence of what they can do inside.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
people are still doing international travel. Um, I have a few ladies who are caregivers to their husbands, and so um, that's a really big impact on their life to be able to confidently do that job,
mm,
for as long as they are able to, and not get hurt themselves. And so it's empowering to them for sure.
amazing. And you've talked a lot the examples you've given there of more kind of functional based exercises such as the landmine, shoulder press and
Mhm.
squats, and we talked deadlifts. And is that the type of movement patterns you tend to kind of focus on, or do you prefer those over maybe more isolated exercises or the fixed machines or anything along
Mhm.
those lines?
Mhm. Yeah, we do pretty much all the gross motor functional based um, exercises as probably the foundation of it. I can describe the program just a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So this is for the group class that meets twice a week. So I do the programming for that, and we do 4 weeks at a time. So
Hmm.
we'll do 4 weeks, like, on Tuesdays, it'll be the same exercises every Tuesday, but the reps will change. And So they'll get a little different stimulus every week to be able to get stronger with those particular movements. But we do a section that's balance and agility.
Hmm.
So a little cardio, uh, and the higher intensity interval type training, and that might only be 12 or 15 minutes. But we're hitting things that improve single leg balance, improve dual tasking, whether it's, doing a thinking task while you're doing a physical task. I tell people it's so that you can walk in the grocery store and read your grocery list at the same time. You know,
Any examples of what you're getting them to do during an exercise for that?
sure. Well, one that we're doing now is I have them hold a kettlebell in one hand
Yeah.
and do high marching, and then they have to turn their head side to side.
Hmm.
So I'm getting them to do kind of a complex, balance movement with some weight, and then add in like a visual stimulus where they're having to, change their direction of looking, or they could close their eyes. I kind of give them choices. They can they can choose from a little menu.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll do more of like a grapevine stepping, but then with maybe naming foods by the letter of the alphabet, something simple like that, or states and capitals, something that makes them think at the same time that they're doing that. So I had a client ask me yesterday, he goes, well, would I get bonus points if I just send a text message during this exercise? And I said, yes, that's a perfect
Yeah.
example of dual tasking while you're doing something. So they're kind of getting the application of all of this as I, just explain things as we go. So we
Yeah.
have a section of those type of exercises. And then we'll also do floor transfer. So if we're going to do burpees or something like that, we'll do some type of floor transfer during the
Hmm.
week too in that section. Another section would be more for heavier strength work, which would be the
Hmm.
compound movements, the squats, the deadlifts, the lunges, the upper body pulling, the upper body pushing, those compound movements,
Yep.
where we do a lower rep scheme, like we'll do 5 or 6 repetitions. And I'm
Hmm.
really trying to get them to get familiar with what working at about 80% of their capacity feels like. So we use that RPE, the rating of perceived exertion, to teach them kind of how to train their body in that way. And
Yeah.
then the last section is we do more maybe accessory motions where we might do some compound things with lighter weights, like a goblet squat, or we'll do more single joint exercises like a bicep curl. But I call it, we always add in layers of spice. So
Hmm.
we make it a little spicy by nobody just gets to sit or stand and do a bicep curl. We're standing on foam, like a foam pad,
Yep.
doing the bicep curl, and then maybe also with your eyes closed. So
Yeah.
just depending on where they're at, I don't want anyone to feel unsafe, but I tell
Hmm.
them it's okay to feel wobbly.
Yep.
So just explaining those parameters and our ratio is pretty small. We have one coach to 10, about 10 or less participants.
Okay.
So, I'm able to go around to everyone and make sure they're doing it correctly. We demonstrate every time there's a demonstration of the exercises, so keeps it fresh in their mind.
Yeah. Because is it the same cohort that works for a certain number of weeks and then it changes, or are they just been continually coming for a while now?
We have new members, a couple of new members that start every month. So they'll always kind of be someone that's a little more new, but then you get a lot of peer modeling,
Hmm.
because they're watching, someone that's been there for a longer amount of time do the exercise, and so they are modeling off of them if they can't quite remember, because it is a little bit of a cognitive challenge because it's during one of the sections, well, two of the sections, there are 4 exercises.
Hmm.
So you have to keep track of where you're at. We're not all doing them at the same time.
Yeah.
It's set up in kind of stations. And so, you've got to get to each of those 4 exercises for 3 rounds
Hmm.
and keep track of how many reps you're doing, and what weight you're using.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be quite a cognitive challenge for some as well.
Brilliant. And I just wanted to kind of go back through each section of that in a little bit
Mhm.
more detail. So yeah, I again the interview just had she brought out some research that 12 minutes of the high intensity training 2 to 3 times a week
Hmm.
is enough to make a significant difference. And interesting to what type of uh, format is those are those high intensity
Hmm.
sort of the 12 minutes that you've mentioned there.
Sure.
What do they, is that on a, say, an exercise bike and you're doing kind of interval based trainings like sprints and then a bit more relaxed, or is it more kind of
Hmm.
the exercise floor based exercises, or what format does it
Hmm.
take?
Hmm. I'll use a couple different just for like structuring that period of time. We'll do one day. Right now, this is kind of how we've been doing it for a little while. Is an AMRAP, which is as many rounds as possible.
Yeah.
So I'll give them, a certain amount of time. Right now we're at about 15 minutes and there's four exercises. So they'll try to go through those four exercises as many times as they can. And there's different repetitions for each one.
Hmm.
Um, so everybody can work at their own pace. I've got people that, move a little slower and people that they're just sweating by the time they're getting
Mm.
done because they have the
Yeah.
capacity and the drive to do things a little more at a higher intensity. So that's kind of a structure. And then another structure is the EMOM, which is every minute on the minute. So I have a timer going, and so they'll work hard for 30 seconds
Hmm.
on a particular exercise, and then they'll take a break for 30 seconds. And so we'll repeat that over 12 to 16 minutes.
Yeah.
So depending on the month, if I've programmed three exercises or four exercises. So um, again, it lets people individualize their own intensity. But I'm always coaching, because I'll say, this is how hard I want you to be working. And if I notice somebody's not working as hard as they have in the past, I'll want to know what's wrong with them. So we don't all show up at 100% when we're
Mm.
coming to exercise. But it helps me kind of keep tabs on everyone and they can let me know if something's hurting them and if I can modify something for them.
Yeah.
Um, the exercises within each section are just a variety. Sometimes it is something more cardio based, like jump roping. We'll
Okay.
do
Hmm.
all different levels of jump roping. Um, Sometimes it can just be like a line hop, like back and forth, just over the line, just kind of a quick stepping. Um, we'll do like we have weighted balls like medicine balls. So we'll do like slams
Yeah.
on the floor. So you pick them up and slam them down. Um, so all different variations of those kind of things. We'll use the TRX straps, the suspension trainer
Yeah.
type things for doing some lighter kind of a squat row, kind of a combination movement just to get a lot of good joint range of motion.
Hmm.
So that is a technique that we'll use as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, that sounds great. And just thinking of, yeah, for people doing it at home, I suppose you could use body weight squats as well, and
Hmm.
some of the, I suppose, press ups, or
Hmm.
it could be scaled down versions. But yeah, I imagine there's a whole host of things. But someone could
Right.
just take that whole concept of, right, I'm going to set a timer for 12 minutes, 15 minutes, pick four
Hmm.
exercises, try and do somewhere between 10 and 15 repetitions, or do you have a particular rep
Yep.
range that you're looking for of those type of
Mhm.
exercises?
Right. I look at the whole month when I'm programming,
Hmm.
because we'll start with maybe 8 to 12 repetitions and then be up to probably 15 toward the end of the month.
Yeah. Okay.
But the beautiful thing about like the EMOM where you're just timing it is you're going to do as many reps as you can.
Hmm.
So you don't have to count. It's a little more of you put things on autopilot a little bit. You
Yeah.
just look at the clock and when it's at the 30, then you're resting, and when it's at the top, you're going hard again if you can. Um, and you can increase that intensity as you get warmer. As you kind of your body gets used to doing it, you can find yourself getting a little more intense. And at home, I think, programming things where you're doing maybe more single leg activities like a lunge or a step up, things like that. If you're just using body weight, that can add challenge to it.
Hmm.
But just, yeah, repetitive chair squats, holding whatever weight you have. If you hold a 5 or 10 pound weight at your chest, that can just add a little intensity to that if you need it. I do try to work in impact exercises for bone health.
Yeah.
So we teach them different ways to do that, whether it's just a heel drop or a stomp. And so if they're marching, some of our marching activities, I want to hear noise. So we talk about the importance of impact training on their bones. And so I'll work that into some of those exercises too.
Brilliant. It kind of leads nicely on to kind of the next question as part of that, because someone listening to this might have thought we were just going to talk about the pure strength side of things,
Mm.
and we've now started with the high interval intensity training.
Hmm.
What's the what was would you say to the person listening that wasn't even thinking of that side of thing? Why would you want to include that alongside the strength? What's the benefit of it?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, you have all your muscular system is very important, obviously, but your cardiovascular and your skeletal system are things that we can't, ignore. So, strength training is going to be good for all of that because it
Mm,
is, even if you're not getting your heart rate up really high, it is good for your heart when you're doing heavier strength training. But working in the interval training where you are getting a little more heart rate response, or if you're on a medication that keeps your blood pressure and your heart rate down, you're at least getting an intensity response. So your respiration rate's increasing, your body is pushing into a little bit of an uncomfortable level, um, so that you just build more reserve in your system.
yeah,
So that when you need to work hard or need to do something strenuous at home, it doesn't feel as strenuous because you've already worked your body harder than that. So you've built in some reserve, you've got some, fuel left in the tank.
yeah, makes
So
sense.
building up that reserve for cardiovascular health and then skeletal health, keeping your bones, um, stimulated with that impact. And
Hmm.
then also just the muscle fibers that are responsible for those quick reactive things. So when we're doing some of the stomping and jumping and modified versions of those, that's going to help all of your balance fibers, so that your reaction times stay quick. So there's so many different factors that come into everything that we're doing. So that's one of the things I love about programming is that we get to just touch on so many layers of performance, just for improved functional activity and safety.
Yeah, because I talked about it a couple of episodes ago in terms of it's all well and good being strong, but if you can't access that strength quickly enough, then
Mm-hmm.
that can cause some problems. And the example of trying to walk into a room and catching your toe on a carpet, if you
Yeah.
can't get that foot back in front of you quick enough and then be able to absorb the increased momentum and the force that that produces, then that's where
Right.
the increased risk of falls come in. And imagine falls prevention is quite a big kind of sort of a goal you have in mind with people, even
Mhm.
if they're not thinking about it, is
Mhm.
it sounds like a lot of this from the intensity work to the balance to the strength is trying to reduce falls. Is that an important part of it?
Right. I mean, that's usually with this demographic, that's a big concern, right?
Mm,
It's falls resiliency, because falls can be common in any age group,
mm,
um, but they're more damaging. There can be more detrimental effects
yes.
if you fall when you have weaker bones. If you fall and you can't catch yourself in a way to not hurt yourself. And so we'll focus in some of those fall training strategies, whether it's, if you're going to lose your balance backwards. We work a lot on ab strength and hip strategy, ankle strength. And so I'm working just kind of dropping those in different parts of the program so that I know how they relate to falls prevention, but my participant, they don't need to know all of that. It's just
Mm,
it's like I know how the medicine works. They don't need to know all the components of how that medicine works, um but it's they know that it's for their benefit, and I'll let them know as we go along. This really helps you catch your balance if you are going to lose your balance backwards. So when we're working on some ankle dorsiflexion activity. So
yeah.
yeah, and then giving them more confidence that they can get up and down off the floor.
It's a
Because
huge one.
there's everybody in the class can do that. And that's not always the case. Like some people come into the class not not being comfortable with that at all. Like they could do it, but it'd be a big struggle. And for some people, just with their history of orthopedic injuries or something, it is a struggle. And so we modify, you don't have to get down up and down off the floor for a lot of things. And so we'll raise surfaces. We've got, some boxes or a mat that they can get up and down for some of the exercises so that they don't feel like they're just wearing themselves out. So very scalable to every body type and situation. But it gives them the confidence that they can.
Yeah. It reminds me of a patient I saw where I'd been treating her husband, and we'd been working on floor transfer, working the ability to get on and off the floor without using his hands. And
Mm.
he'd convinced her to come and see me. So she came in, and almost the first thing she said to me was, "I won't be doing anything on the floor. Um, I've heard what you've been doing with him. I'm an old lady. This is not appropriate for me." And it was trying to convince her, well, actually, it's even more appropriate for you because, yeah, it's if we just assume we can still do it, but we never actually practice it, the only time you really get to find out is that time you have a fall, and then that's not a time to find out that you don't have the ability left to do it. And
Right.
particularly in the UK with ambulance waiting times, they
Mm.
can be for a fall that's not sort of a critical injury.
Hmm.
It's not been unknown for people to be waiting 4, 5, 6+ hours,
Wow.
and if they're stuck on the floor, yeah. Whereas, yeah, if you've got the ability to practice, scoot over
Hmm.
to somewhere you can at least get yourself up onto. So yeah, it's definitely a big important part of it.
Sure. Yes.
And then coming on to the sort of the balance end section, so you give a couple of ideas of doing things in an exercise whilst doing head turns or closing eyes. Is there anything else you kind of or any favourites, a sort of balance-based exercise, or particularly
Mm-hmm.
again, someone listening to this that might be thinking, "Right, I'll try some incorporate this into my home workouts,"
Hmm.
and they may not have too much equipment available. Is there any kind of
Hmm.
good ideas there?
Right. Yeah. Anything that's multi-directional. So we do a lot of stepping forward, stepping sideways, stepping backwards. And so one of the tests that we do in the class incorporates that as well, which I think we'll go over in a little while. But so, mini lunges in those three directions. And actually, we kind of call them clock lunges. So if you pretend that you're standing in the middle of a clock,
Yep.
and then you just go through a pattern. You can step with your right foot toward the 12, then toward the 3, then toward the 6. And then you do the left foot 12, then 9, then 6. And so you're getting all of those directions. And then you can break it down to doing, step towards, the numbers in between, to kind of just get those different angles. So whether you're holding something while you're doing that or, doing a cognitive task, counting by twos or, something like that, or just having the television on, and kind of being distracted while you're doing it. That's a really simple one to do at home for sure.
Yeah. Perfect. And then the one I really wanted to come on to is the strength side of things, because again, a lot of people think the exercise in itself makes it a strength exercise or not. And you've already come in and said about the 5 or 6 reps and
Hmm.
the the relative or perceived rate of exertion. And can you sort of talk a little bit more there about why that is so important, and as in the intensity of it in terms of building strength?
Right, right. Well, I mean, we know with medication that you can take medication, but if you're not taking the right dosage, it's not going to have the same effect.
Mhm.
So I draw that into strength training as well. You can do a leg raise, but if you don't have any weight on it and it's not very challenging for you, then you're not going to get the effect that you want. You can, same with bicep curls or an overhead press. You can do a 2 pound dumbbell, but you're never going to get any stronger than that, and so then you're not going to get the result you need. So having a trainer or a physical therapist or occupational therapist give you some parameters to test what you can do. So some of it is assessing, what your capacity is at this moment, and then working into that. So I was just referencing a research study where they looked at using rating of perceived exertion, testing the 1 rep max, using the reps in reserve
Mhm.
framework for doing intensity, and all of them were effective at making strength gains. The one that was favored, the one that people liked the most was RPE, the rating of perceived exertion. It just was more comfortable for people, but I think for some people it takes a little bit of on-ramp, a little bit of onboarding to figure out what 80% feels like.
Mm.
Because when you're first starting any exercise, especially if it's new to you, everything can feel hard. So you don't even know what your capacity is. So I think that can take several sessions with a professional to figure that out. Or if you're following along on a video or something, really listening to the instructor to saying, how many squats can I do in 30 seconds? I've never tested that before. So, testing your body out to see what you can do is important. Um, and then knowing that the reps in reserve and the RPE, um, those frameworks are very related. They're correlated. So whichever one you use, it doesn't matter. But that you're using the right intensity for both of those.
Because I talk about reps in reserve a lot because that's my kind of bias and preferred one that I tend to use with people.
Hmm.
So again,
Yeah.
for anyone listening who's not familiar, it's that at the end of the number of repetitions you're aiming for, how many more could I have done? And we don't really want it to be any more than it should be sort of within one or two as maximum. Anything more
Yeah.
than that, you should have been using a higher weight.
Hmm.
What's your ruling for the rate of perceived exertion in terms of what is it? Do you score out of 10? And what are they aiming for? Is it the 80% you talked about there?
Right. Yeah, I like the 0 to 10. I think it's easier for people to conceptualize what a percentage feels like. So, with
Mm.
2 reps in reserve, I would say, well, that's at least 80%
Yeah.
of your 1 rep max. And so really I'm getting them to be like 80 to 90% of their 1 rep max. And in the same kind of, instructional period that I'm talking to them about, I'll say, you're going to be working 80 to 90%. That's your goal. Or also having only 1 or 2 reps left in the tank. Talk about,
Hmm.
the gas in the tank. You want to be almost out. So giving them those analogies that help conceptualize what their body should be feeling and to test it out. If I notice somebody is, looks like they're not struggling at 6 reps, I'll just come over and say, Diane, show me how many of those, single arm bench presses you can do with that 10-pound weight. And they're up to 12, and
Mm.
I was like, okay, so now we know, you had 6 reps left in the tank. So we're going to be able to work up, and they got to build that confidence. They're not going to be able to go to, 20 pounds that next set, but they're going to go to 15, probably be able
Mm.
to do 8 or 10 reps and work their way up gradually until you get to know your body. So testing yourself out by figuring out what those reps in reserve are, and then the next set coming back and challenging yourself a little more.
Yeah. One thing I just wanted to, I'm just thinking of a newer listener that's less experienced with some of the lingo sometimes gets confused. What do you mean by 1 rep max? Just to clarify
Mhm.
for them.
Right. So that would be the amount of weight that your body can safely do only one time.
Yeah. So if you could do it second time, it's not
Right.
your 1 rep max because
Right.
you've done it twice.
Right.
So you could have done a little bit higher.
Right. And there's some prohibitive things with testing that on every joint. It can be, unless you have a trained professional with you to test it, and you're nice and warmed up and your technique is dialed in and good, then that I don't test that a lot on my older adults.
Hmm.
When I worked in a rehab facility, I did test it on the leg press because they were sitting, everything was stabilized, and they were just using, 1 foot to push out on, um, a hydraulic machine, and I could get a 1 rep max on that. Monitoring for pain. We have a good warm up period, but I'm not testing people's 1 rep max on their deadlift, but we
Hmm.
might do their three rep max, which you can do calculations from all of these, to calculate a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
So if you get to be where you could do 5 repetitions of a certain weight, and not 6, then that would be your 5 rep max.
Hmm.
And then there's charts and there's apps that, we can download on our phone that can calculate what your 1 rep max would be. So then from there, I can calculate what 80% of that is. So it's just doing a little bit of math and working backwards, um, to find if you really want to be specific about weight or to project. I wonder how much I could lift.
Yeah.
Um, so that can be helpful.
And then I'd be interested to hear your approach on how you get someone to the point of reaching fatigue at 6 reps,
Mhm.
particularly if they haven't had much experience in the past. And
Mhm.
sort of for reference, and my approach, I tend to be get someone familiar with the exercises first,
Mhm.
then in doing 15 repetitions, and I get them to add a bit of weight, start to explore fatigue at 15.
Mhm.
So then just getting used to a little bit of weight without lifting too much too soon, and then over time increasing the weight to bring the reps down, and
Mhm.
over a minimum of say 12 weeks trying to bring them down to that 5 rep max point.
Right.
Do you use a
Right.
similar thing, or do you start at 5 reps and just nudge the weight up at that point, or what's the approach you tend to take?
I think there's a couple of different ways because if I'm working one-on-one with a client, I think that's a lot easier to get them there sooner, because I'm monitoring them, um, specifically one-on-one. And so, yeah, just getting all those motor patterns in place and making sure they get a lot of confidence. I want their confidence to be improving at the same time as their strength,
Yes. Yeah.
so I want them to feel good about the weight that they're lifting and very proud of themselves and accomplished. And so that is a win. That's more of a win than actually getting a number, or
Mhm.
a certain number, a certain weight. So yeah, that can take a good 4 to 6 weeks, probably if you're starting with, ground zero, somebody that's really not familiar with that kind of intensity or doing any weightlifting, at all. So that would be a pretty normal timeline to be able to get somebody confident enough to be getting close to figuring out what their 1 rep max is, that 4 to 6 week mark. Now, someone in a group class, it depends on their history, of course, what their experience level is. But I don't worry too much about them getting that stimulus during the 6 rep section, when we're doing the 2 exercises, that we push a little harder. I'm just wanting them to get used to it. So I really kind of give them an out. And I was like, your body is gonna be making gains because we know, right, Chris, about the neuromuscular gains that people are making early on in their strength training journey. Your body just gets better at moving, period. You're not adding muscle fibers in those first couple of weeks. Your nervous system is improving, and so you're getting more confident and more smooth with your movements. So then we can get into some of those more hypertrophy focused things after that system has already adapted, after the neurologic system's adapted. So people in the group classes, I'll let them know it'll be a month or two before you're working as hard as, Luann over there,
Hmm.
um, who's, been coming for 2 years and she's up at the, 120-pound deadlift. That's I let them know there's quite a little bit of an on ramp, but you'll get there.
Yeah. And then you sort of implied a few times about how beneficial it is for them to see other people and
Mm,
they've done it for a bit longer and see what they
mm,
did. Do you find that the group setting makes a difference in someone's progress?
mhm. Yeah, for sure. I think it's invaluable for some people, to see that camaraderie and to know that, someone else that kind of looks and moves like them is lifting heavier weights and not getting hurt and it's safe. I think that's part of probably one of the biggest reassurances is that everyone's doing these exercises already and they look safe and they're looking confident doing them. And so it gives them more confidence to try something that maybe if they were the only person in that room, they would look at me like I'm crazy and go, I'm not jumping. I haven't jumped in 2 decades. I don't want to do that. But they're seeing all the modifications And I have people that never thought that they would jump again, doing lots of jumping.
Amazing.
So yeah, it really, I think from the safety factor, that comfort level really increases to a um, whole nother level when you have a little community doing the same thing.
Yeah. And I think there's an element of accountability as well.
Hmm.
I know I run a similar class at my clinic where I've only got the space for the five, but we get five coming in a couple of times
Yeah.
a week. And there's two of them that now carpool and they share the lift in.
I love
And they
that.
both admit every morning they're not particularly looking forward to it. They sort of
Mhm.
dread the idea of it, but then they leave feeling much better and glad they've come and doing something positive about it. And
Yeah.
but the fact they've got each other and they know one of them's got to pick the other one up, it
Hmm.
really helps. Whereas if you're just trying to get to the gym on your own, it's often
Yes.
difficult. So again, I'm just thinking from the listener's point of view of
Hmm.
yes, if there's group settings available, you can make, and that's where just general gym classes can be brilliant for that motivation and accountability to continue.
Hmm.
But if you're on your own, it's trying to find a community of like-minded people that are willing to take those small little steps out of the comfort zone and can make a big difference.
Right. Yeah, I relate to them and I say I need that, as myself working out. I like working out with a small group or with a trainer, so I have that accountability and guidance and structure, you know. I mean, I program, but I don't do my own workouts really. So, some of the time I like following someone else's program so I don't have to think so much. So, um, and I think that's a good thing for therapists that might be listening to this too, or trainers, like if you're not willing to be coached, it's hard to be a good coach if you
Mm,
haven't been coached. So that's just another thing to look at from your client's perspective is you want to relate to them on that level too, that it's important to um, appreciate the value of groups and of coaching as well.
definitely. And
Hmm.
also just for, again, another individual listening that might want to do something, even if you don't have the resources to find a coach, is creating a plan yourself that,
Hmm.
and like you said, and it's similar to me, you not changing the exercises much week to week.
Right.
It's having the consistency of doing it, but having that plan to follow with
Hmm.
the knowledge that you need to try and find that 80% and try and sort of get to 6 reps without many reps in reserve and
Yeah.
keep working on that
Hmm.
really helps monitor progression, see the improvement, and keep that motivation. And I use the analogy of like the couch to 5K. The fact that all you have to do is step outside the front door, turn it on, and it's got the plan ready for you to follow really
Yeah.
helps because again in the gym if you just got to open the plan up, you've documented what weights you used last time.
Hmm.
It's really powerful just to be able to kind of take that decision fatigue out of what you're going to do each time and create a
Yes.
new workout every time you show up, and that's a mistake I've
Right.
often seen.
Right. And it doesn't have to be super complicated for those people that don't have access, like you said, to a group or anything. And we know that some movement is better than no movement. So getting out there, and even if you don't have the implements like at your home or whatever to get every movement to that 80% level, um, strength gains and hypertrophy gains, like muscle growth gains, can be made in those higher rep levels. It just depends on the intensity.
Mhm.
So if you have a slow or a lower weight, or you're doing just body weight exercises, you might need to do more repetitions to get to be working at about 80% of your effort. But you're still going to have those gains. And so, research is showing gains on both sides of that. So it's not all about, getting heavier and heavier weights for everything.
Yeah,
But it is mostly about the intensity that you need. That's the secret sauce that
yeah,
you have to have a lot of effort, at least for a short amount of time, within that workout.
yeah. I'd certainly agree with that. I would say if you're going to take one thing away, it's not necessarily the exercise you pick; it's the intensity you perform it at that is going to build the
Mhm.
strength.
Yes, yes.
Is there any other common mistakes you see people tend to make?
Hmm. And you don't have to have a lot. You can pick two lower body and two upper body exercises and do those twice a week for a month.
Hmm.
Don't overcomplicate it. It can like that. There's benefit to something just super simple. So it's, um, I think. I tend to make it a little overcomplicated because I like to be creative with my exercise program, but I'm also doing it for a group. I'm doing it for a product that, people come to me so that they have variety. So if you're seeking out variety, you might seek out an online program or something, a resource where someone else is, giving you some other ideas.
Hmm.
Um, but if that's not important to you, it's not necessary. You can do very simple things, that are still very beneficial. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Um, I suppose the last question is, if someone's sitting on the fence, they're sort of feeling a little bit inspired now. Have you got any other sort of final words of encouragement or sort of suggestions for anyone thinking of getting into resistance training?
Well, I think it's just I just want people to always look ahead. What are your goal? What are your plans? Where do you want to be living? What do you want your longevity journey to look like? Do you want to maintain independence, keep traveling, just remain in your home? What does that look like to you? And what kind of medicine are you willing to take to get there? And so the exercise and movement is part of that prescription. If we kind of want to look at it from that medical model, is that, the minimum of 2 times a week for strength training is what a doctor would prescribe, what a trainer would prescribe for you to, be able to improve your level. And then something I wanted to touch on was being able to monitor some things on your own. Like
Hmm.
a lot of people check their blood pressure at home, on a certain sequence, maybe monthly or weekly. So, but to check some of your movement vital signs, like
Yes.
how, how many times can I get up and out of a chair um, in 30 seconds and write that on the calendar. Say, this month I could do 7, without my hands. Well, maybe that you work that in as an exercise, once or twice a week, and then next month check it again. So it's just having some little metrics of your own, or how hard is it to walk up and down your stairs? Things like that, that you're kind of paying attention to. So paying attention to those things and not letting things just um, go down the slippery slope of deconditioning. People oftentimes just quit doing things and they don't even really realize it, but they're like, yeah, I just don't really go down in my basement anymore.
Mm.
Well, that didn't happen overnight. That was a slow fade sometimes. And so paying attention to those things in your life, and then just seeking out some resources like the things that you offer, Chris, to help, come alongside you to help you on that journey.
And I'd forgotten we were going to talk about those baseline tests and those movement vitals you talk about. So yeah, we've got that first one there is the 30-second sit to stand test.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, the important comparison is you're comparing yourself to yourself.
Right.
But the good thing is there's also some normative values, aren't there? So there's age range and gender
Mm-hmm.
separated goals that are considered good, bad, or good, average, above average, or below average.
Yes.
So you can kind of see where you sit already, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You started talking earlier about one that you almost do as an exercise but can be used as a test, which is it the four square step tests? Is that the one you were going to mention?
Yes. Yes. So you imagine having like a cross on the floor, and you can make it with tape or just lines in your tile floor where you step, in a quadrant. You step around those 4 squares one way and then the other way. And then you would time that. And so like you said, it's important for, to compare to yourself, but to be able to go around one way and then back the next way, a cutoff score is around 10 seconds
Okay.
between being a faller and a not faller.
Yeah.
Um, so, and that doesn't matter as much as comparing what you did this month to what you did the next month. And so working those multi-directional balance activities helps improve that test and helps you be better at changing directions quickly.
Mm.
So, um,
Any other tests that you like?
those two that we mentioned, the chair stand test and the Foursquare, are tests that we do every quarter in
Yeah.
the group class. And then we also do a single leg single leg balance. So just that standard single leg balancing. And then we also do grip strength.
Yep.
So on a grip dynamometer. So any therapy clinic would have something like that. A lot of gyms have those too. So just getting a little running test of where you are now, and then, after you've been lifting some heavy things, how much more grip strength you have. And all of those, a lot of those tests, the chair stand test and the grip strength test, those are related to longevity,
Hmm.
rates of mortality actually. So there's been a lot of research on those. So they're really easy things to measure, and you get a lot of information from that.
Yeah, within my course, I recommend some of those tests and the grip strength in there. And for anyone listening, you can find grip strength dynamometers on Amazon for really inexpensive. So yeah, and I can link to a couple of options in the show notes. But
Mhm.
again, it's worth making that investment because, like I say, that more information you can do every
Mhm.
um, whether it's every quarter or you can do it as frequently as you like, but you can kind of see the pattern. Is it staying stagnant? Is it improving as you're doing more, or is that decline happening with all these tests? The other one I quite like is a sit rise test. It's a slightly more
Mm.
advanced. I wouldn't bring it in with everybody, but it's that act of trying to get from standing down to the floor into almost a cross-legged position without using your hands, and then
Right.
back up again.
Mhm.
And there's actually a scoring system for that, which is for every point of contact on the way down and every point of
Mhm.
contact on the way back up, you score a point, and there's a maximum score of 10, which,
Oh.
um,
Mhm.
and that's a nice one. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few different ones out there, and
Mhm.
then if you're documenting your workouts, you can monitor the weight and that improving. And again, it's
Mhm.
all adds to the motivation as well, I think.
It does. It does for sure.
Right.
Mhm.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've covered a lot there, and conscious of your time as well. If anyone really wants to sort of find you on social media, or is there any sort of resources or anywhere they can go to learn a bit more about you, or make contact if they needed to?
Yeah, yeah. I'll be found at staystrongomaha.com. And so, and then I have a few social media channels too that are linked together, and I've emailed those to you, so that'll be in the show notes.
Yes, I'll put those in.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
so
Well, like I
appreciate
say,
it.
I really appreciate your time, and thank you for talking to us.
Hmm.
So yeah, I hope you have a great day.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Thanks. Bye. That was an information packed episode from Betsy there. So much practical advice that you can take and add into your programming of your workouts. I certainly was reminded a few things that I maybe don't include as much of that I could be including. So I'm certainly going to use what she taught us there in the programming of some of my clients in the clinic. If there is anything in particular that you learned today that you will use to change your approach, I'd love to know what that key takeaway was. So send a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching on audio podcast or listening on audio podcast, just head over to YouTube and you can leave a comment there. And then be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future episodes. Whilst you're there, you could also give the video a like and share it with anyone you feel would benefit from this. I'm going to put all Betsy's details in the show notes. So you can find those through the podcast player you're listening to this on, or again, they'll be in the YouTube comments. And you can connect with her there if you've got any questions for her. But for now, I will leave you to it, and we'll see you in the next episode.